Hello everyone and welcome. In my previous video, I introduced the first version of a music recommendation app that I've created. If you haven't seen that video yet, be sure to check out the link in the description below if you want to go ahead and give that a watch. But just to give a quick recap of that app, it utilized a machine learning algorithm to suggest new songs to users, and the goal was just to have the user expand their music collection. They would be able to swipe left or right on songs presented to them, and then after they swiped right on enough songs, they could go ahead and create new playlists, add those songs to their existing playlists, basically do any interaction that you could with Spotify with the app and the new songs that you'd found. In the last video, I talked about how I would have developed the app differently if I were to start over. The good news is I decided to start over. I wanted to address all of those lessons that I had learned from developing the app once, improve it, and actually plan to release it to the App Store. So this video will mark the beginning of a development log style series where I will be sharing the progress that I've made on the app. I started working on this again in November of 2023, so this will represent about 3 months of development work. Going back to the previous video, I went over 3 major changes that I wanted a next iteration of the app to address. Fortunately, I have already been able to address all 3 of these changes, and now it's just time to build upon them and make the app more fully featured. The first issue with the original app was that I didn't use any sort of pattern in the front end code. This wasn't necessarily a problem at first whenever I was just getting the base features done. However, as I went back through and tried to add new features, change different pieces of functionality, or really just go back and look at old code, I noticed that it was very difficult to follow. The solution I implemented in this go-round of the app was the block pattern. The block pattern separates the view from the business logic, and just to go over the block pattern briefly, you can kind of split it into 3 main pieces. The first piece is the view. This is where the users will see the app. It's the actual user interface that the users will interact with. The view should not do any of the work. All the view is doing is listening to the block, and whenever the block tells the view, hey, something has changed, you need to reload, it will show those new changes with a state in mind. The second is the actual block. You can split the block up into 3 different files. They have events, states, and an actual block or manager file. A simple example of block handling that we'll see in this app would be when the user swipes on the song that is currently being shown, that is the event. With that event, there can be data associated with the event. So for this event, we were talking about a swipe. We mainly want to look at the velocity of the swipe, so that will tell us which direction and how fast. So then we would be able to know if it was a swipe left or right. The UI would add this event to the block stream. Since I have a specific handler for that event, once that goes into the block, it will get handled with code that I have specifically for that event. It will figure out if it was a like or dislike, and then it will update to show the next song. It will emit that next song as a part of the new state, and then the UI will reload. The last piece of the block pattern is repositories. A repository is kind of any data interaction that you're doing. For example, like talking to a database or an API. In the liking or disliking, the like song would be either added to a database or hit my backend API to find songs that are similar to it if it was liked. The second major change that I wanted this version of the app to address was using Firebase instead of AWS. I talked about how AWS wasn't necessarily a bad solution and everything worked fine with AWS. However, I learned that Flutter plays extremely well with Firebase. You're able to set up streams where you can just listen to the database in real time. So whenever something in the backend changes, the UI would automatically know about it and be able to quickly reload, which after we get into the demo, we'll be able to see how much more seamless in real time the results are. The final adjustment I wanted to make for this iteration that I went over in the last video was giving the backend more responsibility. In the first version, the Flutter and Dart code really did all of the work. The Lambda functions that I used to talk to a DynamoDB table did a little bit of it, but overall, the Flutter and Dart code did pretty much all of the work. So in addition to setting up a Cloud Firestore with Firebase, Firebase also has a few other tools that I am using. One of them is Cloud Functions, which is very similar to Lambdas, but you are able to configure these to automatically run whenever something in the database happens. The other backend piece that I added was a custom Python service to do some of the Spotify communications. There was one other change that I realized I wanted to make after I published that first video, and the thing I wanted to do was set up a proper local environment. And this would be actually using Docker to get both a local instance of Firebase running, as well as my Python service. I'll show a clip right now of just the wrapper script I have for Docker Compose to get both of these containers up and running. All I have to do is navigate to those repos and run a /compose build, and all of the containers I need will start up and running. Like I mentioned, there's also a local instance of Cloud Firestore, so that way I don't need to interact with the production database every single time I'm trying to test a feature. And the Python container exposes the Python API for me, so that way I'm able to either get new recommendations or stuff that I can offload and not have to do in the front-end app. So just getting this app up and running, we can see that there's actually a welcome splash screen using a pub.dev package to actually animate some text. But we will notice a ton of differences in this version of the app. Going over first, we have our main swipe screen. So this is where the user will be presented with those songs. And the first big thing on this swipe screen is I'm using an actual card. If you click back to the previous video, or I'm sure I can have a clip of what I had originally on the side somewhere, actually having a card is a significant improvement. The UI looks a lot better. It's actually like a dating app that you would see on the App Store. So it still has the same basic information, the song title, the album art, the artist. You're going to be able to interact with these buttons down here. Nothing happens with them yet, but those will eventually connect to your Spotify account and actually be able to follow an artist, play and pause a song, or add the song to your library. The other really cool thing that I think I've done with this card is if you just tap it, you're able to flip it over and see the artist's top tracks and other related artists. This is a significant improvement compared to what I had in the original version. It is overall a lot less clunky, and you're able to get all the information you need about the artist. You're going to be able to go through and either add these songs to a queue or add them to a playlist. Again, a lot of this functionality will get added in future devlogs for you to see, but right now this was just more about getting a user interface that didn't look terrible. And then you're also able to either drag left or right if you like a song or dislike a song, so we can go ahead and and we'll just like a few other ones, just so that way we have something to make with a playlist. So speaking of playlists, next up we have our actual playlist creation screen. The playlist creation screen now is able to filter based on the time that you liked it. So we can look within the last hour, I like these. Within the last day, it's the same. But if I go and say the last 15 days, I'm able to see all of the songs that I've liked within the last 15 days. All of this is done in Firebase with a timestamp, so it's very easy to implement once I started using the correct tools. But you can go ahead and select the songs that you want to select, and then you can go ahead and create a new playlist. You will get a pop-up dialog, and the same thing will happen if you want to add it to an existing playlist. You can go ahead and fill out all of this information, and it would actually create a new playlist for you on Spotify. The only other big addition that I wanted to talk about in this devlog was the theming. Theming was something that I found pretty difficult in the first go round. Not only did the app not look too good, but I had no idea how to dynamically theme the app. So if we hit this settings button, you're able to dynamically toggle a light theme and a dark theme. This is not the final theme design that I'll go with, but just actually getting that implemented is done. All I'm gonna have to do now is switch out the theme that I'm using. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Thank you all for watching. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section, and I will see you all in the next devlog video.